Here we see a suplex counter to a headlock. Edouard Carpentier tries putting a headlock on Thesz, and he's kind of dragging him around. Like usually a good player would be making Thesz fly in a hip throw by now, but this is one of the potential counters to a hip throw when you don't get your leverage and your placement right. Thesz gets a very strong seatbelt grip around Edouard Carpentier's hips. Thesz drops his own hips and blasts off, throwing Edouard Carpentier behind him. And this is the kind of suplex that we see in Greco-Roman wrestling a lot. And we saw this rather famously in some of Dan Severn's first fights in the UFC, where he just did these huge suplexes to his opponent like 2 or 3 times in a row. Um, it's an extremely dangerous throw when you don't have a crash pad, and it can knock people out on the way down, and it can even knock the thrower down. I mean, it can even knock the thrower out if they don't do all their technique correctly. So this is definitely a realistic counter when people take those head throws. If memory serves, I've even seen like some of those rather tasteless videos of kids fighting in bathrooms at high schools or whatever, where one kid would throw the other in a headlock and then one of the other kids would defend by doing it. And the kid was lucky that he didn't get killed. So this is a realistic counter. It's definitely something that you can see, and defending players are lucky when they don't get killed if these kind of big slams are allowed. But this is one of the reasons why in like Gracie Jiu Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, they really shy away from doing headlocks just because the counter capability is huge, and they trained so many counters in their original curriculum. And I think sport Jiu Jitsu gets away from this a lot. But if you ever came up in like more of a traditional Gracie Jiu Jitsu dojo, they had you drill a lot of these headlock escapes, and there's several of them. And this is definitely one of the more dangerous ones. Usually they train the less dangerous ones, but this one is definitely an option. And whereas usually like Gracie's might just go down and use gravity to do pull downs, here it's like the violent alternative to that high amplitude throw, but it's just as viable. And one of the only downsides is if you don't have a safe environment to practice it, you might end up knocking yourself out, let alone hurting your opponent really badly or your training partner really badly. So that's why most of these are practiced with a crash pad.